Did you ever wonder what the parts in your gaming rig do? Did you ever wonder why they are important to your gaming rig? Did you ever wonder if RGB can improve your gaming performance? That last one wasn't a joke. It can improve your gaming performance. I can't. I'm sorry. Don't waste your money on RGB if you can't afford it. But it's fun. But seriously, what do the parts in your gaming rig do? In this video, we'll find out what your central processing unit, or CPU for short, does and why it's so important specifically for 1080p gaming. This might influence your next upgrade. Firstly, let us get something important out of the way. Hopefully, you'll find my explanation simple and easy to understand. A man of the common gamer, if you will. If you want the interstellar tier of PC experts that are gonna tell you how this thing is gonna explode space and you need 500 nanometer blah blah blah, we're not gonna really go too much into that. If you want to, you can head over to Gamers Nexus, who likely know more about a PC part than the actual engineers who made it. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. I know that they get called up all the time. The amount of knowledge that Steve and the gang have over there is like actually scary. And if I was a big PC part company, I'll just employ them. Like, I don't know why they don't have a job there, and they can be the R&D team, like, on steroids. That would be smart. I've told you all of this because of the hope that what I say is simple. Think of this video as a crash course on your CPU and 1080p gaming. This is if you want to learn how to speak about CPUs at a water cooler and you know what you're talking about, or if you just needed just a quick ramp into what CPUs do and why they're important to your rig. This is the video for you. You're gonna walk away smarter. Now, moving along, let me try to explain the CPU thing that I keep going on and on about. In a PC, the CPU is the brain of the operation. Nothing happens without the brain's permission. Like, it can give out tasks to the other components like the GPU, then receives the finished task and allocates it to where it needs to go in your PC ecosystem. It can also receive tasks. For example, when you press a key on your keyboard, that electrical impulse travels to the CPU, and the CPU then checks what the key was pressed, checks that the application running like Microsoft Word has registered the key press, and tells the GPU to render the correct key press, checks that the GPU has rendered the correct key press, and receives the rendered key press from the GPU, and then sends that completed task to your operating system and your monitor to display it on screen. This all happens in microseconds. It's happening so quick that you don't even notice it, and your CPU is doing thousands of these tasks every single second. Now imagine how many tasks your CPU allocates and processes in a game like Battlefield 5, which is notoriously power hungry when it comes to using up all of your CPU's processing power at 1080p resolution and even at 1440p. It's not a shock to see a Ryzen 5 or Ryzen 7 with at least 1, 2, or 3 CPU cores at 100% usage at 1080p, which means that the CPU is processing at an incredible rate, and its power is actually being taken advantage of thanks to the incredible work at the DICE development team. If the CPU is the brain, then the motherboard would be comparable to your central nervous system, your circulatory system, and the skeletal structure in your body combined. The motherboard provides the highway and infrastructure upon which all the processes and impulses travel, similar to how your brain is connected to all of the systems in your body, which is 12. We've Googled it, and Google's the truth. 13 if you count a chakra. The CPU is connected to the motherboard in a very similar way. There's no chakra, and there's no chakra in your keyboard or your computer. Don't quote me on that. Gamers Nexus. All those tasks travel around the motherboard, making their way to their destination, whether it be the CPU, GPU, monitor, or RAM, which results in a working PC. I used to think that the only part of your gaming rig that was important for running games was your GPU. That's about as true as saying that the earth is flat or that your computer has a chakra. It's not. It doesn't have one. Your gaming rig is an ecosystem, just like your car, and if all the parts are running well and are of premium quality, then you'll achieve the maximum performance that it's capable of doing. I never knew how much a CPU affected gaming performance until I saw a 1080p gaming benchmark in comparison to a 4K one. When gaming at 4K resolutions, you would probably achieve the same FPS results when comparing a 12-core, 24-thread Ryzen 9 3900X to a 4-core, 4-thread Ryzen 3 1200 using a top-tier GPU like a 5700 XT. Why is that? Due to the fact that at higher resolutions, the bottleneck in your system is a result of the GPU being unable to render fast enough because of the high image fidelity of the frames rendered, essentially giving your PC a breather in the amount of tasks it has to process because of the slow work rate of your GPU. In layman's terms, your CPU gets more time off work at 4K in comparison to 1080p because 1080p is a very demanding boss. At 1080p, the GPU has a much smaller display size to render, less pixels, a smaller file size per frame, so it renders much faster, which means that your CPU has to process tasks from the GPU faster. Think of when you save a photo in your mobile phone's gallery. If you save a low quality picture, it takes up less space on your phone. But if you increase the megapixels and increase the quality of your camera, all of a sudden you're taking photos with a larger file size. A photo is essentially one frame, so the better the quality of the photo, the larger the file size of that single frame. Hence, at 1080p, your GPU has a lot of smaller, lower quality photos to render, while at 4K, it has to get through the same amount, but all these photos have larger file sizes. Hopefully now you can understand why your GPU starts sweating when you decide to purchase a 4K monitor and your CPU starts checking the prices of the cheapest holidays online. Off to Bali. When your PC goes off to Bali, you don't want to go there. You don't want your PC in Bali. It's going to get waterlogged. It's not IP68. It's a problem. This means that the faster your CPU can process the GPU's rendering at 1080p, the more FPS you will achieve. Therefore, the bottleneck will be your CPU at 1080p, and it will be with your GPU at 4K. So the stronger CPU, like a Ryzen 9 3900X, will mean more frames at 1080p in comparison to a Ryzen 3 1200, whereas the difference will be less severe at 4K. I've seen games at 1080p where the GPU is not fully utilized with the top of the line processor. Whether they are badly optimized or not is another question entirely. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But the evidence is clear. 1080p will always result in a CPU bottleneck if you have an enthusiast level GPU in your gaming rig and your CPU is not powerful enough. In conclusion, if you're thinking of buying that 1080p 240Hz curved esports gaming monitor, you better make sure that you pair your high-end GPU like the 5700 XT with a monster of a CPU like the 3900X. Like that's a good one. This will ensure that your CPU has enough processing power to keep up with your GPU and give you the most frames possible. Do not make, and I repeat, do not make the same mistake my friend made the other day when in the past, it wasn't the other day. He bought his gaming rig. He's got a fancy gaming rig, right? When he bought his first gaming rig, he neglected to spend on everything except the GPU, and then he bought a 144Hz 1080p display, thinking that the GPU did all the work. Clearly, at 1080p, it does not, and his CPU suffered the consequences. If you're sitting in this position right now, there are going to be two solutions. Either you buy a new processor, or you upgrade your 1080p monitor to a 1440p or 4K monitor. The first solution will increase your frame rate at 1080p, and the second solution will release the bottleneck on your CPU and shift it more toward your GPU. Note that I briefly mentioned the motherboard and GPU and didn't mention RAM at all in this video. I will in all likelihood make separate videos on them, so they don't feel left out, or you guys want to learn a little bit more. I hope this explanation of a CPU was simple and that you now understand why it's so important to have a powerful one for 1080p gaming. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I really want to hear. And 1080p gaming is something that's super important. Make sure that you get the highest frame rate over your resolution. If you're playing competitive games like CSGO or Overwatch, you want to have more of a competitive edge. And that's why this is so important. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below and what your rigs are. I want to know what you guys are buying, what's on your wish list, and what you're looking to set up. See you guys in another video. Cheers.